Hello and welcome to this introductory tutorial of the Omniverse particle system. In this video we're going to be making a particle system from scratch in Omnigraph. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make a source. So let's go into the stage, let's right click and create a shape and make a sphere. And we're going to be using this in a little bit. So now that we've made our source, we now need to make our particle system. So let's go up into Omnigraph, hit editor, and let's pull the sphere into the Omnigraph editor. And we're going to be using this in a little bit. One thing I like to do when I make a particle system in Omnigraph is I like to keep everything organized. So let's add in a subgraph so that we can easily see what's inside the particle system and what's not. So let's right click and add a node and create a subgraph. And it's going to be up here. So let's move all this over here. And there's another way you could do that too. You could go into create particles and then click on subgraph right here. So there's two ways you can make this subgraph. So now what we need to do is we need to start putting nodes in the subgraph. So let's right click inside of the subgraph. Let's go into add node, particle system core. And what you want to do is you want to select the solver. Now that we have the solver node, we also need to grab the state. So left click, drag the state from the stage into Omnigraph. Now we need the state node to connect to the emitter in the next step. Now that we have our solver and our state, we need to add an emitter node. Right click again in the subgraph and go to add node, Omni particle system core, and select particle system emitter. And what we need to do is we need to connect a couple of things here. First thing we need to do is we need to connect the outputs of the particles into the inputs of the particles. And then what we need to do is we need to click this handle here and then left click drag this into inputs prim. So this is saying this is the source for the emitter. Then in the state, click and drag the top handle into the inputs particles in the particle system's emitter node. Next thing we need to do is we need to decide what kind of particle system we want to emit. We have a number of choices. We have a point instancer, we've got a particle visualizer. We can also set up a geometry replicator as well as a trail system that will be shown in the documentation in a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a geometry replicator. So again, inside of the subgraph, right click, add a node, go down to Omni Particle System Core, and then go to Geometry Replicator. And again, what we need to do is we need to connect the output particles into the input particles. The Geometry Replicator is the method in which we are going to be emitting the particles, and now we need to decide what we want to attach to the points. So let's go up into the Create window. Let's go down into particles and then let's add in a sprite. And then the sprite is over here. So let's drag this closer to the geometry replicator node. And what we need to do is we need to connect this into the inputs prim. This connection tells the geometry replicator to attach a sprite to each point. Now the sprite is just a mesh and you can connect any mesh shape that you want here. So you could create a mesh in the create menu or import a mesh from a third party and then connect it here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to basically say draw to the visualizer. So let's once again go up into the create menu, go down into particles and then click on mesh. Let's grab the mesh node and then drag it closer to the geometry replicator node so we can make our connections. Click and drag the outputs mesh and connect it to the top handle on the mesh node. And now we have a particle system that's emitting sprites. Now at this point we can close Omnigraph. And the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that it has a material. Now the particle system comes with its own translucent material, so we're going to use that. So let's go into Create, go down to Particles, and then click on the Particles material. And this will create a Looks menu in the stage, and a translucent particle is there. Now we need to assign this to the mesh. So go up into the mesh, go down to the materials on selected models. Let's drop this in right here. And you can't really tell that anything's changed. So let's go back into the translucent particles And let's change up the diffuse color. Let's make that a 2. You can see that this is a little bit more pink now. Now from here, you could add in fields and start changing the behavior of your particle system and your emitter to whatever it is it needs to do. If you're curious about the setups for the other emission types, like the point instancer, particle visualizer, trails, and flow emissions, I provided snapshots of each of the different Omnigraph setups in the documentation to use as starting points. Now in this tutorial, you've set up a basic geometry replicator in Omnigraph from scratch and attached a translucent material. Thank you for watching.